Son, your wife is stealing from us. During dinner, my mother-in-law went to the kitchen to fetch the main course and found $2,000 in cash in my purse. Well, if we're going that far, I smiled, you might as well check the pocket of my jacket too. What she found there sent her straight to the ICU. Hello, dear listeners. I'm glad to welcome you to my channel. Here's a new and fascinating story for you. Enjoy listening. For the first time in 3 years of marriage, Catalina felt the taste of her own money the day $1,000 landed on her card. She sat in the kitchen, staring at her phone screen, unable to believe that the money was truly hers, earned by her own hands. Not begged from Jorge, not handed out by Concepcion for household needs, but hers. Getting a job as a programmer hadn't been easy. 6 months earlier, Catalina had stumbled upon an ad for online web development courses. She'd always been good at math, but after getting married, she'd had to forget about studying. Her mother-in-law believed a young wife's place was at home, cooking soups, ironing Jorge's shirts, and, of course, producing grandchildren. But there were no grandchildren, and Catalina studied quietly at night while everyone slept, grinding through code until her eyes watered. When she finally landed a remote job with a small IT company, Concepcion pursed her lips. Well, she said, we'll see how long that lasts. A programmer, huh? And who's going to cook dinner? Catalina still cooked, and cleaned, and did laundry, but now she also worked. She slept 4 hours a night, with dark circles under her eyes, but she met every deadline. And now, her first paycheck. She didn't tell her mother-in-law. She told Jorge that evening, when he came home from work. He was thrilled, hugged her, and spun her around the kitchen. My smart girl. He laughed. I'm so proud of you. But then his mother walked in, and Jorge's face grew serious, almost smaller. Mom, Catalina got paid $1,000. Concepcion wiped her hands on her apron and slowly turned to her daughter-in-law. $1,000, she repeated. And what are you planning to do with it? I'll buy a laptop, Catalina blurted, though she knew it was a mistake. What laptop? The mother-in-law stepped closer. You already have an old one. It can't handle the software I use. I need something stronger. And how much does this stronger one cost? $750. Concepcion sat down on a stool, her face stretched in disbelief. $750 on a piece of metal, she muttered, shaking her head. Jorge, do you hear this? Your wife's about to throw away nearly her whole paycheck. Mom, she needs it for work. Work? The mother-in-law snorted. She's been working 3 months. 3. And she's already splurging like that. Catalina, dear, have you thought about saving for the family? For shared needs? Or do you think that since you earned it, it's only yours? Catalina stood by the sink, clutching a mug of cold tea. She didn't want to fight, didn't want to ruin the day. But Concepcion didn't stop. Jorge gives me his whole paycheck. I distribute it for everyone, groceries, utilities, clothes. That's what family means. But you, it seems, have a different idea. I just want to buy a work tool, Catalina said quietly. A work tool for $750, the mother-in-law repeated slowly. Jorge, you tell her. Jorge shifted awkwardly, looking between his mother and wife. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Well, Mom, maybe she really needs it. Of course she needs it, Concepcion cut him off. I just don't understand where these needs suddenly come from. Maybe she's not telling us everything? Maybe she has other income we don't know about? Catalina raised her head. The mother-in-law's stare was sharp and probing, as if trying to drill through her skull. I have no income besides my salary, Catalina said. Sure. $1,000. And what did you live on these last 3 months? I gave you $25 a week for groceries. Was that enough? It was. And you brought me receipts? Yes. Then everything's clean. Concepcion stood and headed for the door. Buy your laptop, then, if you must. But remember, if something goes wrong with your job, Jorge and I won't bail you out. You made your choice, you deal with the consequences. She left. Jorge sighed and rubbed his face. Don't mind her, he mumbled. She's just worried. Catalina didn't reply. She finished her cold tea and went to the bedroom. The next day she ordered the laptop. When it arrived a week later, Concepcion stood in the hallway, watching as the courier handed Catalina a large box. "So that's it?" she asked. "Yes. $750 for a box," Catalina replied evenly. "I hope it's worth it." She carried the laptop into the room and set it on the desk. Her hands trembled, not from joy, but from anger. She had never felt so scrutinized, as if she'd stolen something rather than bought her own work tool. That evening, Concepcion stopped by under the pretext of returning a pair of scissors. Catalina was sitting at the new laptop, installing her software. The mother-in-law paused behind her. "Pretty," she said. "Must have been expensive." "Mid-range," Catalina replied without turning. "I see you have a new handbag, too." Catalina froze. The bag lay on the bed, a simple black one she'd bought at a chain store for 1,500 pesos. But Concepcion had already picked it up. "Leather?" she asked, feeling the material. "Faux. What do you keep in here?" She began unzipping it. "Concepcion, that's my bag," Catalina snapped. "I'm just looking," she said calmly, rummaging inside. "Oh, a makeup pouch. And a wallet. Where's your phone?" "On the charger." "Ah." The mother-in-law zipped the bag and set it back down. "Nice bag. Convenient." She left. Catalina sat frozen, heart pounding. What was that? A search? A check? Jorge came home late. Catalina was already in bed, but awake. He undressed, lay beside her, and put an arm around her. "Mom said you were rude to her," he whispered. "What?" "She said she just wanted to look at your purse, and you snapped at her." "Jorge, she was going through my things. She didn't mean anything bad. She was just curious." Curious, Catalina propped herself on one elbow. "Jorge, it's my personal bag. Why should she even look inside?" "Well, we're family," he muttered. "No secrets from each other, right?" Catalina turned to face the wall. There was no point arguing. 2 weeks passed. Catalina kept working, taking small assignments, doing them at night. The money trickled in, little by little, but steadily. She opened a separate e-wallet where she sent everything she earned. She didn't tell Jorge or, God forbid, Concepcion. Then something happened that shattered their fragile peace completely. Jorge came home pale, one cheek swollen. He held his jaw and winced in pain. "Tooth," he groaned. "An abscess under the root, needs to be pulled and replaced with an implant." Catalina took him to the dentist for a consultation. The doctor said they couldn't delay it. Infection could spread to other teeth. Extraction, cleaning, implant, $300. "Mom, I don't have money," Jorge told Concepcion that evening. "My paycheck's only next week." She sat at the table, counting receipts with a calculator. $300? She repeated. "Jorge, that's robbery. You need to find someone cheaper." "Mom, it hurts. The doctor said it's urgent." "All doctors say urgent, so they can charge more. I'll call my friend at the district clinic. She can do it for free." "There's a 2-month wait," Catalina interjected. "I checked." "Don't worry, Jorge, I'll pay for it." Concepcion looked up. "You'll pay?" she repeated. "And where would you get $300? "I earned it." "In 2 weeks?" "Yes." The mother-in-law set down the calculator and folded her arms. "Catalina, I'm, of course, glad that you're so independent, but maybe you'll explain to me how a programmer with 3 months of experience earns $300 in 2 weeks. Do you realize how much that is per month?" "I took on extra projects. Freelance work." "Freelance," Concepcion drawled. "And do you pay taxes on this freelance of yours?" "Not yet. The amounts are small." "So you're working illegally?" "No. These are one-time projects. One-time projects that bring in $300 in 2 weeks. The mother-in-law got up and walked to the window. "Catalina, do you understand how suspicious that sounds?" "Mom, what does that have to do with anything?" Jorge stepped in. "She's just offering to help. I just don't want some authorities coming to ask us questions later." Concepcion cut him off sharply. "Where the money came from, why there are no documents. Jorge, you wait a week, get your paycheck, and then go. My cheek is swollen. Take some antibiotics. That'll calm the inflammation." Catalina left the kitchen and went to the bedroom. She took her phone, opened her banking app, and transferred $300 to Jorge's card. Then she messaged him, "It's paid. Make an appointment for tomorrow." Jorge came in 5 minutes later, looking guilty. "Thanks," he mumbled. "I'll pay you back." "You don't have to. Mom didn't mean to offend you. She's just cautious." "Jorge, go book the appointment." He nodded and left. Catalina stood by the window. Cautious. Yes, right. Cautious, as long as it's about her own money. But when it's someone else's, suddenly there are questions, suspicions, insinuations. The next day, Jorge went to the dentist. He came back with a numb jaw but looking relieved. "They took it out," he said. "They'll put in the implant in 2 months. The doctor said I came just in time." Concepcion met them in the kitchen. She silently put on the kettle and brought out some cookies. "Well, feeling better?" she asked. "Yes, Mom. Thanks to Catalina." The mother-in-law nodded but said nothing. She poured tea, set the mugs on the table, and sat down across from them. "Catalina," she began, "I've been thinking, maybe you could show me your bank statements, just for order's sake, so we know what we can count on." "Why?" Catalina asked. "Because we're family, and if you have money, it should be factored into the common budget. If something happens, we'll know what resources we have." "Concepcion, those are my personal accounts." "Personal?" she repeated with a smirk. "Catalina, dear, when you get married, there's no such thing as personal. Everything's shared. Or do you think you can live separately from us?" "That's not what I mean." "Then what do you mean?" Concepcion leaned forward. "You work, you earn money, you spend it without consulting anyone. I don't even know how much you actually have. And then suddenly it turns out you can pay $300 for a dentist. How do I know you haven't already saved up $1 million? $1 million? Catalina snorted. "Yes, sure." "Then show me the statement, and I'll calm down." Catalina looked at Jorge. He was hunched over his phone, pretending not to hear. "I'm not showing my statement," Catalina said. Concepcion leaned back in her chair. "So you do have something to hide," she drawled. "No, it's just my private matter." "A private matter in our house," the mother-in-law corrected. "Fine, Catalina, don't show it. But remember, if something comes up, you'll answer for it yourself." She stood up and left the kitchen. Jorge finally looked up from his phone. "Why do you have to provoke her?" he asked quietly. "I'm not provoking her. I just don't want to report every cent I spend. She's just worried." "Jorge, she's controlling. There's a difference." He didn't answer. He finished his tea and went to the bedroom. Catalina stayed in the kitchen alone. That night she couldn't sleep. She lay staring at the ceiling. Something had changed. Concepcion used to be merely intrusive, but now her questions had become aggressive, as if her daughter-in-law were a threat, as if Catalina were about to take something important away from her. And 3 days later, Catalina realized exactly what that was. She had left her phone charging in the kitchen and gone to the bathroom. When she came back 10 minutes later, the phone was in the same place, but the screen was warm. Someone had used it. Catalina opened the settings. The last app opened was her banking app. She hadn't logged in for 2 hours. Her heart began to race. Catalina went into the kitchen. Concepcion was at the stove, stirring soup. She turned and smiled. "You look pale," she said. "Feeling unwell?" "I'm fine," Catalina answered, taking her phone. The mother-in-law followed her with her eyes. The smile stayed on her lips, but her eyes were cold. Catalina went to her room and shut the door. She sat on the bed and stared at her phone. She'd never set a password. It hadn't seemed necessary in her own home. Now it did. She opened the banking app and checked the login history. Last access, 5 minutes ago. From this device. Concepcion had gone into her account, checked her balance, studied her transfers. Catalina exhaled slowly. So that's how it is. She stood, went to the mirror, and looked at herself. Pale face, dark circles, tight lips. She looked exhausted, cornered. But something in her eyes had changed, a sharpness, cold and cutting. Catalina pulled an old notebook from the drawer, opened it to the first page, wrote down the date, and one word, observe. She was done enduring. Now she would study. The next day, She bought a voice recorder, a tiny one, the size of a lighter, with a 24-hour battery life. She ordered it online, picked it up from a locker, and hid it in her makeup bag. No one noticed. The first recording happened by accident. She left the recorder in the living room, disguised as a headphone charger, a small black box plugged in behind the TV. Concepcion walked by 3 times and didn't even glance at it. That evening, her friend Isabella came over, a plump woman with dyed red hair and a loud voice. They sat in the kitchen drinking tea, leaving the door open, their voices carrying through the apartment. Catalina sat in her room at her laptop, pretending to work, but listening. "Look at her," Concepcion was saying, "walking around like she owns the place. Bought herself a laptop for $1,000. Paid for Jorge's tooth. I don't understand where she gets all that money." "Well, she's working," Isabella replied. "Programmers make good money these days. She's been working 3 months. 3. And she's already handling sums like that. Isabella, I'm telling you, she's up to something. Maybe she's taking out loans? In Jorge's name? Of course. Took them out under his name and spends the money herself. I can tell. She's always got something new. A bag one day, a blouse the next, shoes the day after. Where's it all from? Have you asked Jorge?" "I did. He says, Mom, it's her money. She earns it." "Earns it? He's completely blind. Doesn't see she's driving him out of his own home." "Oh, come on, Concepcion. Maybe she really does earn it." "Isabella, I worked 30 years in accounting. I feel numbers. And I'm telling you, something's not right here. Needs checking." "How are you going to check?" "I don't know yet, but I'll think of something. I can't just sit back while that upstart takes my son for a fool." Catalina clenched her fists. Upstart. So that's what she was, an upstart who dared to earn her own money and spend it as she pleased. She waited until Isabella left, then took out the recorder and transferred the audio to her laptop. She listened again, this time with headphones. Concepcion's voice oozed poison, every word dripping with suspicion and contempt. Catalina saved the file in a separate folder, simply titled Evidence. A week passed. Concepcion acted overly pleasant. Every morning she asked how Catalina had slept, whether she needed help with cooking. She smiled, offered tea, but her gaze stayed cold, watchful. Then came an invitation to a family lunch. Concepcion's brother Diego was celebrating moving into his new apartment. He invited the whole family, their sister Elena, his wife Maria, the nephews, and of course, Concepcion, Jorge, and Catalina. Dressed decently, the mother-in-law said that morning before they left. "Everyone will be there. I don't want people thinking we're paupers." Catalina put on a simple black dress and modest shoes. Concepcion looked her up and down, pursed her lips, but said nothing. The lunch was lavish: salads, hot dishes, appetizers, cakes. Diego was in high spirits, cracking jokes, pouring wine, bragging about the renovation. His wife Maria, a thin, perpetually dissatisfied woman, silently served plates. Catalina sat at the corner of the table, trying to stay invisible. She ate little, answered briefly, but could feel glances on her from time to time. Then Concepcion raised her glass. "I want to make a toast," she announced. "To family, to us always staying together, and to everyone remembering that family is sacred. No lies, no tricks, honesty above all." She looked straight at Catalina. Everyone else followed suit. Catalina raised her glass with the rest and took a small sip. The wine tasted bitter. "Concepcion's right," said Sister Elena. "Honesty is everything. My niece Palomita, remember her? She lied to her husband for 2 years that she had a job, but really, she just sat online all day. When he found out, he divorced her on the spot. And he was right. Liars should be chased out." Maria nodded. "And how's your job, Catalina?" Elena suddenly asked. "I heard you're working as a programmer?" "Yes," Catalina replied. "Everything's fine." "And you earn well?" Catalina froze. The question sounded innocent, but she could see Concepcion tense, waiting for her answer. "It varies," Catalina said evasively. "Depends on the projects." "Well, on average?" Elena pressed. "Just curious, I've been thinking about switching to remote work myself." "About $1,000 a month," Catalina lied. Concepcion snorted but stayed silent. Not bad, Elena drawled. And what do you buy with that kind of money? Elena, what does that have to do with anything? Jorge interrupted. Why does it matter what she buys? I'm only asking out of curiosity, Elena smiled. Concepcion said Catalina bought herself an expensive laptop. I thought maybe she could share her secret, where she finds such great deals. No secrets, Catalina replied. Just a regular store. For $750, Concepcion added. Regular store, regular price. Everything perfectly ordinary. A pause fell. Diego poured himself more wine and said loudly, All right, enough about money. Let's drink to our health instead. The topic changed, but the bitter aftertaste remained. Catalina finished her salad and excused herself to the bathroom. She splashed her face with cold water and looked in the mirror. Her cheeks were burning, her hands were trembling. They were all in on it. Concepcion had primed them against her, and now every question sounded like an accusation. When Catalina returned, they were discussing apartment prices. She sat back down and tried to keep eating, but her appetite was gone. Haven't you thought about getting a bigger place? Maria asked Concepcion. There are 3 of you in a 2-bedroom. Must be cramped. Cramped, the mother-in-law agreed. But we can't afford it yet. Jorge gives me his paycheck, and I'm saving little by little. Maybe in a couple of years we'll have enough for a down payment. And Catalina doesn't help? Maria asked, surprised. She earns money too. Concepcion sighed. Catalina lives separately, she said. She has her own expenses. I don't interfere. What do you mean separately? Elena didn't understand. You live in the same apartment. I mean financially, the mother-in-law clarified. She spends her money on herself. Jorge and I spend ours on the family. Catalina felt a boil of anger inside. They were discussing her as if she weren't there, as if she were an object. Concepcion, I offered to help, Catalina said quietly. You refused. The mother-in-law turned to her. You offered? She repeated. When? A month ago. I asked if you needed money for the bathroom renovation. You said you'd manage. Ah, right, Concepcion nodded. I remember. It's just that you offered $50. That wouldn't even cover the tiles. I offered $150. The mother-in-law cut her off. I remember exactly. But fine, let's not argue. Either way, it's a drop in the ocean. Catalina bit her lip. She was lying. Lying straight to her face. In front of everyone. And no one contradicted her. Lunch ended late in the evening. When they got home, Jorge went straight to the shower. Catalina went to the kitchen to pour some water. Concepcion stood by the window, smoking. She only smoked when she was nervous. What was that you said about $150? She asked without turning around. I offered you $150 for the renovation, Catalina repeated. You refused. I refused because $150 is laughable. The mother-in-law stubbed out her cigarette and turned. Catalina, you do realize we see everything? We see how you spend on yourself and offer us scraps. That's called selfishness. I spend my own money. Your own, Concepcion smirked. And where do these own funds come from? Care to finally tell us? I work. You've worked 3 months and you're already acting like a millionaire. Catalina, I wasn't born yesterday. I know entry-level programmers don't make that much. So where's the money from? Catalina set the glass on the table. Concepcion, if you don't believe me, that's your problem, she said. I don't owe you any proof. You do, the mother-in-law said firmly, because you live in this house, under this roof, and use everything here. So yes, you owe us honesty. I am honest. Then show me your bank statements. No. Concepcion stepped closer. Catalina, I'm asking you nicely one last time. Show the statements, or I'll have to talk to Jorge. Go ahead. He'll make you do it. Try. The mother-in-law stared at her for a long, searching moment. Then she turned and left the kitchen. Catalina remained standing alone, clutching the empty glass. The next morning, Jorge woke up sullen. He got dressed in silence, drank his coffee in silence, and only as he was leaving the apartment did he turn to Catalina. Mom says you refuse to show her your accounts. Yes, Catalina answered. Why? Because it's my private business. Jorge rubbed his face with his hands. Catalina, why provoke her? Show her, and it'll all calm down. No. Why not? Because it's none of her business, Jorge. It's my money, my accounts. I don't owe anyone anything. You live in our house. I'm your wife, not a tenant. Jorge clenched his jaw. I don't understand what's happening to you, he said. You used to be normal. Now you're prickly. I used to be convenient, Catalina corrected. Now I'm myself. He looked at her for a long moment, then shook his head and left. Catalina watched him go and felt something inside her finally snap. She opened her laptop and went to Concepcion's social media. The password was laughably simple, Jorge 1993, her son's birth year. Catalina got in on the first try. The mother-in-law messaged a dozen people, but Catalina was looking for specific chats. She found them. The first was with Isabella, the same friend who'd come for tea. Concepcion wrote, Isabella, I need your help. My daughter-in-law is completely out of control. Jorge listens to her more than to me. We need to do something before she fully drags him to her side. Isabella replied, What do you want to do? I don't know yet, but we have to discredit her so Jorge realizes she isn't who she pretends to be. How? I'm thinking, maybe accuse her of something? Theft, for example. Concepcion, are you serious? Absolutely. I already broke up 2 of Jorge's relationships. Once I said I saw the girl kissing the neighbor. The second time I slipped someone else's earrings into her bag and made a scene. Worked both times. Catalina froze, reading on in disbelief. And he believed you? Isabella wrote. Of course. Jorge always believes me. He's a mama's boy. And what if this gets exposed too? It won't. She's too quiet, afraid of conflict. Catalina took a screenshot of the exchange. Then she opened another chat with her brother Diego's ex-wife, Marina. Marina, remember how I told you about Jorge? That I broke up his relationships twice? I remember. Why? I want to share my experience. I've got a new daughter-in-law now. Clingy. And what are you going to do? The same as before. I'll find a pretext, make a scene, make her look bad. Jorge will dump her like the others. Concepcion, you're ruthless. I'm protecting my son. And my apartment, by the way. It's a 3-bedroom downtown. If Jorge really gets married, he'll want to move out, and I won't allow it. Catalina saved that screenshot too. Then she found another chat with their neighbor, Daniela. Daniela, can you do me a favor? What kind? Say you saw my daughter-in-law carrying things out of the apartment. Expensive things. Concepcion, I didn't see that. Doesn't matter. Just say you did. I'll pay you $50. $50? For lying? For helping. Please, Daniela, I really need this. Daniela agreed. Catalina took a screenshot and closed the laptop. Her hands were shaking, her heart pounded so hard her ears rang. Concepcion was planning to destroy her, methodically, cold-bloodedly. She'd already wrecked Jorge's love life twice and was set to do it a third time. Catalina went to the window. It was raining outside, gray sky, wet rooftops, empty courtyards. She stood watching the drops run down the glass. Then she took out her phone and opened her banking app. Balance, $2,000. She went into settings and transferred all the money to another account from which she could withdraw cash. The next day, Catalina went to the bank and withdrew the entire amount. She put the bills in her handbag and brought them home. Concepcion was in the kitchen. Catalina walked past her without a word and set the bag on the living room couch. In plain sight, the mother-in-law followed her with her eyes. What's that you've got? She asked. A bag, Catalina replied. I can see that. Why is it on the couch? I forgot to put it away. Concepcion came closer and looked at the bag. It was slightly open, and the edge of a banknote was visible inside. Money? The mother-in-law asked again. Yes. How much? Mine. Concepcion took another step, but Catalina raised a hand. Don't touch it. I'll just take a look. Don't. The mother-in-law stopped. Something flickered across her face, greed, curiosity, anger. Catalina, where did you get that much cash? She asked. I withdrew it from my account. Why? It's more convenient for me. Convenient to walk around with sums like that? Yes. Concepcion glanced at the bag once more, then turned and left. But Catalina could tell her mother-in-law had memorized exactly where the bag was. That evening, Catalina placed a second recorder in the hallway, in the pocket of her jacket hanging on the rack. She switched it on and left it there. 3 days passed. Catalina kept working, cooking, cleaning. The bag lay on the couch. Every day, Concepcion walked by and cast a quick glance at it. Then an invitation came for the mother-in-law's birthday. I want to have a small dinner, Concepcion said at breakfast. I'll invite my sister, my brothers, the neighbor Daniela. Jorge, you'll help set the table? Of course, Mom. And you, Catalina, make something tasty. A salad, maybe, or an appetizer. All right, Catalina nodded. Concepcion smiled. Catalina smiled back. They looked at each other like two chess players before a decisive move. The birthday was set for Saturday. Catalina spent the whole week preparing. She checked all the recorder files, transferred them to her laptop, printed the chat screenshots. She put everything into a large envelope and slipped it into her jacket pocket next to the recorder. She left the bag of money on the couch, as bait. On Saturday morning she got up early and started cooking. She chopped salads, roasted meat, made appetizers. Concepcion bustled around the kitchen giving instructions, but Catalina listened with half an ear. Guests began to arrive at 6 in the evening. Elena came first with a cake, then Diego and his wife Maria, then the other brother Ignacio with his wife. Daniela came last, loud and talkative. The table was lavish. Concepcion beamed as she accepted congratulations. Jorge poured the wine. Catalina sat in a corner and waited. All right, a toast, Diego announced. To the birthday girl. Everyone raised their glasses and drank. Concepcion stood and gave a little bow. Thank you, my dears, she said. Thank you for coming. I'm so happy to see you all here. And we're happy too. Elena smiled. Concepcion, you never change. You're as beautiful as ever. Oh, stop. The mother-in-law waved a hand. I'm getting old. Nothing of the sort. The conversation flowed along familiar lines, weather, news, prices. Catalina kept quiet, picking at her food. She felt the tension coiling inside her, a spring drawn tight. Then Concepcion stood up and said, I'll bring out the main course. She went to the kitchen. Catalina started the timer on her phone. 1 minute, 2, 3, and then a shriek. Son, your wife is robbing us. Everyone froze. Forks hung in midair. Concepcion burst into the room, waving wads of cash. Her face was flushed, her eyes blazed with triumph. Look, she shouted. Look what I found. Money. In her bag. Where from, Catalina? Where did you get $2,000? Catalina slowly set down her fork. It's my money, she said evenly. I earned it. You're lying. The mother-in-law jabbed a finger at her. You stole something or took out a loan in my son's name. Jorge leapt to his feet, pale. Mom, wait. I will not wait. Concepcion turned to the guests. Do you see this? Do you see what's going on? She lives in my house, uses everything here, and steals. I didn't steal anything, Catalina said calmly. Then where did the money come from? I earned it. In 3 months? A rookie programmer doesn't make that much. I took extra projects. Lies. Catalina met her gaze. Well then, she said quietly, why don't you check the pocket of my jacket? A deathly silence fell. Everyone felt something was off. Catalina was speaking too calmly, almost indifferently, but there was steel in her voice. Concepcion froze. Then she slowly walked to the hallway. The guests trailed after her. Jorge came last, pale and bewildered. Catalina stayed at the table. She heard her mother-in-law rummaging in the jacket pocket, heard the envelope being pulled out. What's this? Concepcion asked. Catalina took the envelope from her, pulled out the recorder, and pressed play. Concepcion's voice came from the speaker. Daniela, you'll say you saw my daughter-in-law carrying things out of the apartment. I'll pay you $50. For lying? Aunt Daniela's voice. For helping. Aunt Daniela slumped onto a chair in the hallway. Her face turned brick red. Concepcion, she rasped. What have you done? It's edited. The mother-in-law screamed. She edited everything. Concepcion grabbed the doorframe. Her legs buckled. She slid to the floor, gulping for air. I feel sick, she managed. Call an ambulance, Catalina said, pulling out her phone. Jorge dropped to his knees beside his mother. He held her hand and looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. Mom, he whispered, is it true? Concepcion closed her eyes. The medics arrived 12 minutes later. They took her blood pressure, ran an EKG, gave her a sedative. It wasn't a heart attack, but her blood pressure had spiked to a critical level. She was taken to the ICU. The guests left in silence. Diego was first, slamming the door. Elena lingered on the threshold, gave Catalina a long look, and shook her head. Aunt Daniela tried to say something, but Catalina showed her the screenshot of their chat. The old woman went white and hurried out. Only Catalina and Jorge were left in the apartment. He stood in the middle of the living room, staring at a single point. I didn't know, he said at last. Catalina, I swear I didn't know. I know. Jorge sank onto the couch and covered his face with his hands. They sat in silence. It grew dark outside. The salads on the table went cold and untouched. What now? Jorge asked. Catalina looked at him. Now you choose, she said. Jorge chose his mother. Not right away, of course. For the first 2 days after the scandal, he moved around in a daze, barely speaking, staring into space. Catalina didn't push. She just waited. Concepcion was discharged on the 3rd day. She came home pale and haggard, with dark circles under her eyes. She sat on the living room couch for a long time, staring out the window. In the kitchen, Catalina cooked dinner and heard Jorge speaking softly to his mother. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear, gentle, soothing, almost apologetic. That evening, Jorge came into Catalina's room. He sat on the edge of the bed and was silent for a long time, searching for words. I was thinking, he began at last, maybe we should move out, rent a place and live separately for a while? Catalina set her phone aside. Seriously? Yes. I realize that after all this, it's hard for you to be here. For me too. We need a pause. And your mother? Jorge winced. She'll manage. The doctor told her to avoid stress. Maybe if we leave, it'll be easier for her. Catalina steadied him. His words made sense, but something in his tone set her on edge. All right, she said. Let's look at options. Jorge nodded and left. Catalina stayed on the bed, hugging a pillow. Something felt off. He was saying all the right things, but she could hear the false note, as if he'd rehearsed the speech. The next morning, Catalina woke to a call. An unknown number. She answered, still half asleep. Catalina? A woman's voice said. It's Elena, Concepcion's sister. Catalina sat up. I'm listening. I need to talk to you. In person. Can you meet today? What for? Just meet me. It's important. The cafe on the square by the fountain, 2 o'clock. Will you come? Catalina wanted to refuse, but curiosity won out. I'll come. Elena was already at a window table when Catalina entered the cafe. She looked tired, older. She ordered 2 cappuccinos without asking what Catalina wanted. Sit, she nodded. Catalina sat across from her. Elena studied her for a long moment, as if appraising her. You did well, she said at last. Truly, Concepcion deserved that lesson. Then why this meeting? Because you went too far. Catalina frowned. What? You humiliated her in public, in front of the whole family. Concepcion is on the verge of a nervous breakdown right now. The doctors say one more shock and she won't handle it. That's not my problem. Elena leaned in closer. You see, Catalina, it is your problem, because Concepcion is Jorge's mother, and he loves her. No matter what you do, he won't abandon her. I'm not asking him to. But you want him to choose you, and he won't. He'll be torn between you until he breaks. Is that what you want? Catalina was silent. Elena sighed. Concepcion made a mistake, a huge one. But she's remorseful. She wants to make it right. Remorseful? Catalina smirked. She hasn't even apologized. She will. Just give her time. Concepcion is proud. It's hard for her to admit she's wrong. But she will. I talked to her. She understands she was in the wrong. And what am I supposed to do? Forget everything that happened? No, but give her a chance to fix it. Otherwise, you'll lose Jorge. Catalina looked out the window. People walked down the street, unaware of other people's dramas. A light wind stirred the branches. I'll think about it, she said. Elena nodded, finished her coffee, and stood. Think carefully. It's easy to destroy a family, but putting it back together is almost impossible. She left. Catalina remained, staring at the half-finished cappuccino. That evening Diego, Concepcion's brother, called. He didn't beat around the bush. Catalina, I understand that Concepcion is at fault, he began. But you don't actually think court is the answer, do you? Cold spread through Catalina. What court? Concepcion says you're planning to sue her for slander and emotional distress. I haven't decided yet. Don't, Catalina. This is family. These things aren't settled in court. We can discuss everything, find a compromise. But if you go to the lawyers, it'll be war. And Concepcion won't stop. She'll find a way to hit back. How can she hit back? Catalina asked. She's already done everything. Not everything. Diego paused. She has connections. People at the tax office, for example. She can have your income checked. Untaxed freelance work is a serious violation. The fines can be big. Catalina tightened her grip on the phone. Is that a threat? It's a warning. Catalina, I'm on your side. Really. But Concepcion is cornered, and a cornered rat bites. Don't push it to the limit. He hung up. Catalina stood in the middle of the room, feeling a slow boil rise inside her. They were going on the offensive. Elena was pressing on her conscience. Diego was trying to scare her. What next? Next was Jorge. He came home late, smelling of alcohol and cigarettes. Catalina was in the kitchen with a cup of tea. Jorge dropped into the chair across from her and sat in silence for a long time. I talked to Mom, he said at last. For a long time. She cried, apologized, said she never meant to hurt you. She was just afraid of losing me. Jorge, wait. Let me finish. She really is remorseful, wants to make things right, asks for forgiveness. And I want to give her that chance. What are you saying? Jorge looked up. I want you to forgive her. I want us to stay here. For everything to be like it was before. Like before? Catalina repeated. Jorge, do you hear yourself? She tried to destroy our life. She's been manipulating you for years. And you want me to just forget it? Not forget. Forgive. For my sake. Catalina stood. For your sake? Yes. Catalina, she's my mother. My only one. I can't abandon her. She's ill. She's alone. If we leave, she won't cope. And me? I'm supposed to cope? Jorge rubbed his face with his hands. You're strong, you'll manage. But Mom? She'll break. Catalina stared at him, unable to believe her ears. So you're choosing her? She said quietly. I'm choosing family, Jorge corrected. All of us. Catalina, please, let's try. She promised to change. Promised, Catalina echoed. And you believe her? I want to. Catalina took her cup and poured the cold tea down the sink. All right, she said. Let's try. Jorge exhaled in relief and hugged her. Catalina stood rigid, not returning the embrace. Something inside her snapped for good. The next day, Concepcion put on a family dinner. Small, just the three of them. She made Jorge's favorite dishes, set the table beautifully, even brought out the good china. At the table she was pointedly polite, asked Catalina about work, whether she needed help with anything, praised her salad. Jorge sat content, plainly proud that things were back to normal. Catalina, Concepcion said at the end of dinner, I want to apologize to you. Officially, I was wrong. I let fear cloud my judgment. I was afraid of losing my son and behaved horribly. Forgive me. She looked straight into her eyes, sincere, almost convincing. I forgive you, Catalina said. Concepcion smiled. Jorge set a hand on Catalina's shoulder. You see, he said, everything will be fine. Catalina smiled back, but inside she knew this was only the beginning. The first blow came 2 days later. Catalina received an email at her work address. The sender was unknown. The subject read, questions about the project. She opened it and saw a short text. Good afternoon. We are aware that you do freelance work without proper registration. We recommend legalizing your income, or the information may be forwarded to the tax authorities. Regards. No signature, no contact info. Just a threat wrapped in polite form. Catalina closed the email and took a deep breath. So Diego hadn't been joking. They really were ready to use any methods. That evening a message came from Elena. Catalina, I heard you forgave Concepcion. That's the right decision. But keep in mind, if you do decide to take her to court, the whole family will side with her. You'll be on your own. Think about it. Catalina didn't reply. She simply set the phone on the table and looked out the window. Night had fallen. Street lamps cast yellow pools of light on the wet asphalt. They were surrounding her. Methodically, systematically. First soft pressure, through Elena and Diego, then harsher measures, anonymous threats. What would come next? Next was Aunt Daniela. The neighbors showed up the following day, when Catalina was home alone. Concepcion had gone to the clinic, Jorge to work. Daniela rang the bell, and Catalina, not thinking, opened the door. Hello, dear, Daniela smiled. May I come in? I'd like to talk. Catalina let her in. Daniela walked to the kitchen and sat at the table as if in her own home. Catalina, I thought for a long time about whether I should come, she began, but I decided I must. You're young, inexperienced, you could make a mess of things. About what? About you being wrong to fight with Concepcion. She's at fault, yes. But you understand, things happen in families. The main thing is not to destroy. And you're destroying. Me? You. With your recordings and printouts. You made Concepcion a laughingstock in front of the whole family. Now no one respects her. Diego won't speak to her. Elena's cold. Even I, a silly old woman, can see you went too far. Catalina folded her arms across her chest. Aunt Daniela, I was just defending myself. Defending yourself? Daniela smirked. Dear, defense is when you stop an attack. You staged a public execution. That's different. She deserved it. Maybe. But now she's cornered, and a cornered animal is dangerous. Catalina, I'm telling you nicely, back off. Drop your claims, make peace with her for good. Otherwise she'll destroy you. How? Daniela leaned closer. Concepcion has a friend in child services. She can whisper that you're an unreliable wife, that you live on shady money, that you could be a bad influence on future kids. If you and Jorge decide to have a child, child services can make trouble, inspections, committees, psychologists. Is that what you want? Catalina went cold. This is insane. It's reality. Catalina, I wish you well. Don't tangle with Concepcion. She's stronger than you think. Daniela stood and left. Catalina remained at the kitchen table, feeling her hands tremble. They were pressing from all sides, tax office, child services, family. They were ready to use anything to break her. That evening, Catalina checked her social media. Under her latest photo were comments from strangers. So pretty, shame about the mental issues, heard this girl put her mother-in-law in the hospital, yikes, beautiful but a witch. Her husband must be suffering. She scrolled on. About 20 comments, same tone, all from people she didn't know. She closed the app and set the phone down. So now they'd taken it online. Someone was deliberately smearing her. Jorge came home late. He looked tired, wrung out. He sat beside Catalina on the couch and said nothing. Mom says you've dropped your claims, he said at last. I didn't say I'd dropped them. Jorge turned to her. What do you mean? I said I forgive her. I didn't say I wouldn't go to court. Catalina, you promised. I promised nothing, Jorge. I agreed to give her a chance. But if your mother and her clan keep pressuring me, I'll take this all the way. Pressuring you? What are you talking about? Catalina pulled out her phone and showed him the threatening email, then Elena's message, then the social media comments. Jorge read in silence, growing paler with each line. That's not Mom, he muttered. She wouldn't do that. Then who? I don't know. Maybe someone in the family. Diego, Elena. They want to protect Mom. Protect? Jorge, they're trying to scare me. I'll talk to them. And say what? That they're wrong? They won't listen. To them you're still a mama's boy. Jorge stood and paced the room. Catalina, I don't know what to do. I'm torn between you. Mom is ill, you're under stress. I can't handle it. Then choose, Catalina said, hard. Me or her. There's no third option. I can't choose. You can. You just don't want to. Jorge stopped, gave her a long look, then shook his head and left the room. Catalina heard the front door slam. She sat in the dark. Outside, rain tapped the window, counting off the seconds. She knew she was losing. Concepcion and her family had her ringed in tight. They pressed from all sides, through Jorge, through threats, through the internet. They moved methodically, knowing time was on their side. Catalina picked up her phone and opened the evidence folder, recordings, screenshots, printouts. She had it all. But was it enough? She opened her browser and began to research how to file a defamation suit, what documents were needed, how much it cost, what the chances were. She read deep into the night until her eyes began to sting. In the morning, a new message arrived from an unknown number. Catalina, this is Marina, Diego's ex-wife. I know what you're going through. Concepcion did the same to me. If you want to talk, call me. I can help. Catalina stared at the screen for a long time, unsure whether to respond. It could be a trap, another way to get at her. But it could also be real help. She dialed and held the phone to her ear. Rings, 1, 2, 3. Hello? A woman's voice answered. Marina? Yes. Catalina? Yes. Marina sighed. I figured you'd call. Listen carefully, you don't have much time. Concepcion is preparing a new strike. She's already found a way to make you look unhinged. Soon Jorge will get a letter, supposedly from your former employer. It'll be full of garbage about you, stealing, being fired for misconduct, being unstable. It's all fake, but Jorge will believe it. Catalina tightened her grip on the phone. How do you know? Because she did the same to me. She forged a letter supposedly from my coworkers. Diego believed it and left me. I only learned the truth later, when it was too late. What should I do? Hit first. File the lawsuit now, don't wait. Gather everything you have and go to a lawyer. Concepcion is counting on you to stall. Don't give her time. But Jorge will choose only when he sees you won't back down. If you retreat, he stays with his mother. If you go to the end, he'll see who's right. And if he doesn't? Marina paused. Then at least you'll know the truth, that he's weak, and his mother will keep him on a leash for life. Is that the man you want? No, Catalina breathed. Exactly. Come on, Catalina, don't give up. Show that witch she can't do this to you. Marina hung up. Catalina lowered the phone and looked out the window. The sun was rising over the rooftops, painting the sky pink and gold. She stood, went to the desk, opened her laptop, and found contacts for several law firms. She began to write emails. She would not retreat. She would go all the way. That evening, everything changed for good. Jorge came home pale, a large envelope in his hands. He went to the kitchen, tossed the envelope on the table, and fixed Catalina with a long, heavy look. What's this? She asked. A letter. From your former employer. Catalina took the envelope and pulled out the sheet. She read slowly, feeling the cold spread inside her. Dear Jorge, we consider it our duty to inform you about your wife Catalina's behavior during her employment at our company. She repeatedly violated workplace discipline, was rude to colleagues, and was caught attempting to appropriate others' work. She was terminated for absenteeism and misconduct. We advise caution in financial matters. Signed, Director of some IT company, stamp, date. Catalina looked up at Jorge. Do you believe this? I don't know. He ran a hand over his face. Catalina, I really don't know. There's a stamp, a signature. It looks official. Jorge, I've never worked for that company. I'm a freelancer. I don't have an employer. Maybe before? Before, I didn't work anywhere. I was at home for 3 years until I started learning programming. Jorge sank into a chair. Then where did the letter come from? Where do you think? Catalina flung the sheet onto the table. Your mother. She forged it so you wouldn't trust me. Mom wouldn't do that. Wake up, Jorge. She's already done it, to your ex-girlfriends, to your uncle's ex-wife. It's her signature move. Jorge was silent. He looked at the letter, then at Catalina, then back at the letter. I can't, he whispered. I can't do this anymore. I need to think. He stood and left the kitchen. Catalina heard him put on his jacket, heard the door slam. She was alone. She took the letter, tore it into tiny pieces, then sat on the floor and covered her face with her hands. They'd won. Concepcion and her family had won. They'd surrounded her, cut her off from Jorge, ruined her reputation. They'd done everything to break her. But Catalina wasn't going to break. She got up, went to the laptop, and opened her email. Replies from lawyers were already in her inbox. 3 firms were ready to take the case. Tomorrow she would meet with one of them. Catalina closed the laptop and looked at the shredded letter on the floor. You miscalculated, Concepcion, she whispered into the empty room. You thought I'd give up. But I'm just getting started. She gathered the scraps, slipped them into a sleeve, and filed them with the evidence. One more exhibit, one more nail in the coffin of her mother-in-law's reputation. Tomorrow the real war would begin, and this time, Catalina wouldn't retreat. Jorge didn't come home that night. Catalina waited until 2 in the morning, then fell asleep on top of the covers, fully dressed. She woke at 6 to a call from an unknown number. Hello? Catalina? It's Isabella, Concepcion's friend. Catalina sat up, instantly awake. I'm listening. Don't hang up. I'm not calling at her request. I'm calling because I'm ashamed. Catalina, I took part in this mess. My friend asked, I agreed. But yesterday she went too far. That letter about being fired, I saw her typing it. She wrote the text herself and stamped it with a fake seal herself. Catalina tightened her grip on the phone. Do you have proof? I do. I accidentally recorded it on my phone when she showed me the finished letter. I thought I'd delete it later, but forgot. I can send it. Send it. Catalina, I don't want to be dragged into this. I'll send it on the condition that my name never comes up. Agreed. 2 minutes later a video arrived on her phone. Concepcion is sitting at a table, holding a stamped sheet, giggling. Look, Isabella, just like the real thing. I had Sergio at the print shop make the seal. I told him it was for a joke, and he bought it. Isabella's voice off camera. Concepcion, are you sure this will work? Absolutely. Jorge is trusting. He'll read it and start doubting her right away. And from there, divorce isn't far off. Catalina saved the video in a separate folder, then wrote to Isabella, thank you. I promise your name won't surface. The reply came instantly, good luck. Concepcion deserves a lesson. Catalina stood, washed her face with cold water, and drank some coffee. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, but from fury wound tight as a spring. At 9 a.m., she went to meet a lawyer. A small office on the edge of town, modest interior. The lawyer, a woman in her 50s with a tired face and watchful eyes. Tell me everything, she nodded. Catalina laid it all out, audio recordings, chat screenshots, the video from Isabella, anonymous threats. The lawyer listened, took notes, occasionally nodded. It's not a simple case, she said at last, but it's winnable. You have enough evidence to file for defamation and emotional distress. The problem is, the process can drag on, and your mother-in-law, as I understand, won't stop. What do you suggest? There's another route. Public exposure. Not through court, through public opinion. Gather the family, show the evidence, force an admission of guilt. It'll be faster and hit harder. They won't admit anything. They will if you corner them. Witnesses are key. The more people who see the truth, the harder it is to deny. Catalina thought for a moment. What if I do both? First, expose her publicly. Then file suit. The lawyer smiled. Then you've got a sure victory. Catalina left the office with a clear plan. But there wasn't much time. Concepcion was clearly preparing another strike. She had to hit first. She called Marina, the ex-wife of her mother-in-law's brother. Marina, I need your help. Can you get Concepcion's family together? All of them? Why? I want to show them the truth, but I need a pretext. Marina hesitated. Diego's birthday is the day after tomorrow. He was going to invite everyone. I can ask him to invite you too. Will he agree? If I say you want to make peace with Concepcion, he'll agree. Diego's a peacemaker. He wants everyone to get along. Deal. An hour later, Marina called back. He agreed. The day after tomorrow at 6, his place. Concepcion will be there, Elena, Ignacio with his wife, Aunt Daniela, and Jorge. Thank you. Catalina, are you sure? Absolutely. 36 hours remained before the birthday. Catalina spent them preparing, printing all the screenshots, loading the audio onto her phone, copying Isabella's video to a flash drive. She packed everything into a large folder and rehearsed what she would say and how she would carry herself. Jorge showed up only the evening before the party. He looked exhausted, unshaven. He sat on the couch and was silent for a long time. I've been thinking, he began at last. Thinking a lot, and I don't know who to believe. Jorge, I can prove the letter is fake. How? Tomorrow. At your uncle's birthday. I'll show everyone. Jorge looked at her warily. You're planning something? I just want to set things right. Catalina, don't. Let's settle this between us. No scenes. There's nothing left to settle between us. Your mother dragged the whole family into this, so the whole family should hear the truth. You want to humiliate her again? I want her to stop lying. Jorge rubbed his face with his hands. Fine, I'll go with you. But if you cross a line, I won't be able to protect you. I don't need protection. I need the truth. The next day they arrived at Diego's precisely at 6. The birthday boy himself opened the door, in a festive shirt, wineglass in hand. Come in, come in. Great to see you. Everyone was already there. Concepcion sat in the place of honor next to Elena. Ignacio and his wife were pouring wine. Aunt Daniela was dishing out salads. Marina stood by the window and gave Catalina a discreet nod. Concepcion saw her daughter-in-law and forced a smile. Catalina, how nice you came. I thought you wouldn't. I said I would, Catalina replied. They sat at the table. First a toast to the birthday boy, then to health, then to family. Catalina sipped, barely ate, just waited for the moment. It came when Concepcion raised her glass and said, I have another toast. May there always be honesty in our family. May everyone be able to trust everyone. No lies, no deceit. She looked straight at Catalina. The challenge was obvious. Catalina set her glass down. I agree, she said. Let's drink to honesty. Everyone drank. Then Catalina took a folder from her bag and set it on the table. Since we're talking about honesty, she said calmly, I want to show you something. Concepcion tensed. Jorge paled. Diego frowned in confusion. What is it? Elena asked. Evidence, Catalina replied. She opened the folder and pulled out the first screenshot, a chat between Concepcion and Isabella. Here your sister writes to her friend, we need to discredit the daughter-in-law, maybe accuse her of theft. Elena took the screenshot and read. Catalina pulled out the second, messages with Marina. Where you boast that you broke up Jorge's relationships twice. Catalina continued reading. I already broke up Jorge with his girlfriends twice. Once I said I saw her kissing the neighbor. The second time I slipped someone else's earrings into her bag. Jorge went even paler. Mom, he whispered, is that true? Marina came to the table, took the page, and nodded. It's true. I received these messages from Concepcion, and I wasn't the only one. Marina, you traitor. Concepcion flared. Traitor? Marina shot back. Concepcion, you destroyed my marriage to Diego. You poisoned him against me. He didn't believe me and left. And now you're doing the same to Catalina. Diego sank into a chair. Concepcion, is it true? You interfered in our marriage? I wanted to protect you. From what? Marina was a good wife. She was a witch. She was normal, and you. Diego shook his head. God, Concepcion, what have you done? And now for the best part, Catalina said, opening the video on her phone. Everyone fell silent. The screen showed Concepcion with the fake termination letter. Her voice was clear. Look, Isabella, just like the real thing. Jorge will read it and doubt her immediately. Jorge shot to his feet. Mom, he whispered. You forged the letter? Concepcion opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her face turned ashen. Jorge, you made me doubt my wife. I didn't sleep all night. I was torn apart. And it was a lie. Son, I was trying to protect you. From whom? From my wife, who loves me and never did me any harm. She's taking you away from me. No, Jorge slammed his fist on the table. It's you who took me away from her. You've controlled me my whole life, ruined my relationships, manipulated me. Concepcion clutched at her chest. My heart. Enough, Jorge barked. Stop hiding behind illnesses. You're fine. You're just a selfish woman who won't let her son go. The mother-in-law looked at him in despair. Jorge, please, don't talk like that. I will, because it's true. Mom, you ruined my life. I loved Sophia, and you made me leave her. Margot was a good girl, and you slandered her. And now you're trying to destroy Catalina. But I won't allow it. He turned to Catalina. Forgive me, he said, for not believing you right away, for choosing her, for everything. Catalina nodded without a word. Elena rose from the table. Concepcion, I can't even look at you anymore, she said coldly. You disgrace our family. Diego, I'm sorry we ruined your birthday. I'm leaving. She walked out. Ignacio and his wife followed in silence. Aunt Daniela sat staring at the floor. Catalina went to her and set down another screenshot, the chat about $50 for a lie. Care to explain? Catalina asked. I thought it wasn't serious, Daniela stammered. Just a favor for a friend. You wanted to slander me for money. Catalina, forgive me, I'm a foolish old woman. Yes, a fool, Catalina agreed, and you won't be part of our lives anymore. Daniela stood and left without a goodbye. Only Catalina, Jorge, Diego, Marina, and Concepcion remained. The mother-in-law sat hunched on a chair, her shoulders shaking. I didn't mean to, she whispered. I was just afraid of ending up alone. You were afraid of losing control, Catalina corrected. Afraid Jorge would become independent, stop being your obedient little boy. I am his mother. You're his jailer. Concepcion lifted her head, her face wet with tears. What happens now? Now, Catalina sat across from her. You'll pay me compensation, $500 for emotional damages, and you'll apologize publicly. Publicly? Yes. In front of the same people who heard your accusations. The whole family. I won't. You will, Catalina cut in, or I'll sue. With all this evidence. And then it won't be $500, it'll be much more, plus a record for defamation. Your choice. Concepcion stared at her for a long moment, then lowered her eyes. All right, she whispered. I'll pay and I'll apologize. And one more thing, Catalina added. You will never again interfere in our lives. No more control, manipulation, or pressure. Jorge and I are moving out, and you'll leave us alone. And if I don't, then the whole neighborhood will learn what kind of mother and mother-in-law you are. Think you can live with that shame? Concepcion turned deathly pale. You're cruel. I'm fair, Catalina corrected her. You started this game. I just won. The mother-in-law said nothing more. She stood and, swaying, left the apartment. Jorge followed, but not after her. He only walked his mother to the door. When the door closed, Diego poured himself wine and downed it. I always thought Concepcion was strict but fair, he said. Turns out she's just out of her mind. Not insane, Marina countered. Just selfish. Diego looked at his ex-wife. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Sorry I didn't believe you back then. Too late for sorry. I know, but I'm sorry all the same. They stepped out onto the balcony. Catalina stayed in the room with Jorge. He sat beside her and took her hand. Thank you, he said. For what? For not giving up. For showing me the truth. Was it hard for you? It was. But I'm glad I know. Better bitter truth than sweet lies. Catalina nodded. They sat in silence, holding hands. A month and a half passed. Concepcion paid the compensation, transferred the money to Catalina's card without extra words. Then she gathered the whole family for a dinner and apologized publicly. Her speech was halting and tangled, but she apologized. Elena accepted it coolly. Diego nodded but said nothing. Ignacio didn't come at all. Jorge and Catalina moved out 2 weeks after the birthday. They rented a small 2-bedroom on the outskirts. For the first time in his life, Jorge stopped handing his salary to his mother. He opened his own account and started planning a budget himself. At first he stumbled and made mistakes, but Catalina helped. For a while, Concepcion called every day. She complained of loneliness, of her health, of not managing the apartment. Jorge visited once a week to help with chores, but he always came home. Each time, Catalina saw him exhale in relief as he crossed the threshold of their place. "I'm free," he said one day, lying on the couch. "For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm living on my own." Catalina smiled. She was at her laptop, working on another project. Orders had increased. She raised her rates, started choosing clients, and set aside money for a mortgage down payment. "In a year we'll buy our own apartment," she said. "Ours, where no one tells us how to live." Jorge got up, came over, and hugged her from behind. "You're strong," he whispered. "I wouldn't have managed." "You would. You just needed time." Concepcion's relatives drifted away. Diego reconciled with Marina, not fully, but they started talking, meeting for coffee. Elena stopped visiting her sister and called once a month out of courtesy. Ignacio cut contact entirely. Aunt Daniela moved to another city to live with her daughter, too ashamed to stay. Concepcion was left alone in the 3-bedroom apartment she had fought so hard to keep. Sometimes Catalina thought of her, picturing the mother-in-law sitting by the window, staring at empty rooms. She felt no pity, only the simple fact, a person got what she deserved. One evening Jorge came home upset. "Mom asked us to move back," he said. "She says it's hard being alone, that she understands everything now, that she'll change." "And what did you answer?" "I refused. I said we're not coming back." Catalina went to him and hugged him. "Was it hard?" "It was. But I know it's right. If we return, it'll all repeat. She'll start controlling and manipulating again. She needs to learn to live on her own." "Will she manage?" "I'm not sure. Jorge, she's an adult. She'll manage." They sat in the kitchen, drank tea, and made plans. 6 months later, Catalina got a promotion at the company where she worked remotely. She became a senior developer, and her salary increased. Jorge found a new job with better pay and more flexible hours. They started saving for an apartment in earnest, each month transferring a third of their salaries to a separate account. They economized on small things, but not at the cost of their well-being. They went to cafes and movies, took weekend trips out of town. One day, 8 months after moving out, Catalina received a message from Marina. Concepcion had taken to her bed, depression. Diego was trying to pull her out of it, but she wouldn't respond. She wanted Jorge to come. Catalina showed the message to Jorge. He read it and sighed heavily. "I'll go," he said, "but not for long." "Are you sure?" "Yes. She's my mother. I can't abandon her completely." He left that evening and returned 3 hours later, pale and exhausted. "How is she?" "Bad," Jorge said. "She just sits at home, doesn't go out. The apartment's a mess. The fridge is empty. I cleaned up, bought some groceries, convinced her to see a doctor." "Did she agree?" "Barely. She kept begging me to come back. Said she couldn't manage without me." "And what did you tell her?" "That I won't come back, but I'll help. I'll visit once a week, bring food, check on her." Catalina nodded. It was a compromise, not perfect, but honest. Jorge started visiting his mother every Saturday. He helped with cleaning, shopping, small chores, but always came home. Concepcion no longer manipulated or pressured him. She just accepted the help quietly. A year later, Catalina and Jorge bought an apartment, a small 1-bedroom on the outskirts, but their own. They moved in on a sunny September day, carried in boxes, arranged the furniture. That evening they sat on the floor in the empty living room, drinking wine from plastic cups. "We did it," Jorge said. "We did. Thank you." "For what?" "For not letting me go. For fighting. If it weren't for you, I'd still be sitting in my mother's apartment, handing her my paycheck." Catalina smiled and clinked cups with him. "To us. To us." They drank, and Catalina looked out the window. The city glowed with lights, the streets hummed with cars. Somewhere out there, in a 3-room apartment, Concepcion sat staring into space. Somewhere nearby lived Elena, Diego, Ignacio, each with their own problems, their own regrets. And here, In a tiny apartment on the edge of the city were Catalina and Jorge, free, independent, living their own life. Catalina set her cup on the floor and took her husband's hand. You know what I've been thinking? What? That sometimes the best way to win isn't to destroy your enemy, but to walk away, leave them alone with the consequences. Jorge nodded. Mom got exactly what she feared most, loneliness. Yes, and that's her choice. She could have changed, could have accepted me, but she chose control, and she lost. They sat in silence, listening to the sounds of the city. Then Jorge stood up, held out his hands to her. Come on, let's start building our new life. She took his hand and rose. They went to the bedroom and began unpacking boxes, clothes, books, small things. On one shelf lay that same black bag, now empty, just a bag. But for Catalina it had become a symbol that sometimes the best trap is the one where your enemy exposes themselves. She picked it up, turned it over in her hands, smiled faintly, and put it on the top shelf of the closet, a reminder that the fight had been worth it, that freedom never comes easy, that sometimes you have to walk through fire to become yourself. That night they fell asleep in their first real home. Catalina lay staring at the ceiling, thinking about the future, about work, plans, what she and Jorge would build next. Catalina, Jorge whispered in the dark, are you happy? She paused, choosing her words. You know, not happy, exactly. More like free. And that's even better. Why? Because happiness is a moment. Freedom is a state. You can be free and tired, free and sad, free and uncertain, but still free. And that's what matters most. Jorge pulled her into his arms. I'm free too, for the first time in my life. They fell asleep in silence, in their new apartment. Outside, the city went on living, breathing, humming, and somewhere, in a 3-room flat across town, Concepcion turned off the light and went to bed alone. Surrounded by empty rooms, unfulfilled plans, and the bitter realization that sometimes, in trying to hold on to those you love, you lose them forever. Another 6 months passed. Catalina received a new job offer from a big company downtown with double her current salary. She declined. She liked remote work, liked the freedom of managing her own time. Instead, she opened a small agency, hired 2 freelancers, started taking on larger projects. Progress was slow but steady. Within a year, the agency was turning a stable profit. Jorge was changing too. He enrolled in professional courses, earned a promotion, grew more confident. He stopped worrying about his mother's opinion, stopped second-guessing himself, became his own person. Concepcion slowly came back to life. She started going out again, made a friend among her neighbors, joined a hobby club. She called less, complained less, accepted things as they were. One day, when Jorge came home from visiting her, he said to Catalina, Mom said to tell you hello. Really? Yeah. And she said she was wrong about you, that you're stronger than she thought. Catalina smiled faintly. A compliment from Concepcion. Didn't expect that. She's changing, slowly, but she is. I'm glad for her. Don't you want to see her? Catalina thought for a moment. Not now. Maybe someday. But not now. I don't need that relationship anymore. Jorge nodded. He understood. Time passed. Catalina and Jorge lived their own life, without control, without manipulation, without looking over their shoulders. They were building something of their own, small, imperfect, but theirs. And when Catalina thought back to that evening when Concepcion burst into the room waving wads of cash, she smiled. That was the turning point, the moment she stopped being a victim and became the master of her own life. That bag still sat on the top shelf of the closet. Sometimes Catalina would take it down, look at it, and put it back again. A reminder that even the most elaborate trap works only when the enemy walks into it themselves. That the best way to defeat a manipulator is to give them the rope and let them hang themselves. And that sometimes the price of freedom is loneliness. Concepcion had paid that price in full. And Catalina had gained what she fought for, not a perfect life, not fairy tale happiness, but the simple right to live as she wished. And that was the best reward of all.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.